Oh, thank you. You are very kind. We work very hard at it. I think for me, it's the detail, the care in the detail, and always looking at everything that we're doing it the best, and not cutting corners. So with Casa, that was my philosophy from the beginning, and I think up to now, it's that. It's always making sure that you look at the big picture, because obviously that is very important, but you also need to look at those details, those small things that are going to make the big difference once you add them all together.
Well, I know consistently over the years you've never overlooked a detail. So thanks for letting me squeeze a couple questions in on my show today. Hopefully I can get down to Guadalajara and interview you for a full-length show, and we can enjoy doing that over a nice sip of your perfect tequila.
Wonderful. It'd be great to see you down here, Jim. It'd be a great pleasure, and to enjoy a tequila with you.
Well, that was certainly a surprise for me to have Pepe Hermosillo on the phone. If you're not familiar with Pepe, he's the founder of Casa Tequila, has been in the business for a very long time, and has done just an incredible job with that brand. They continue to excel at what they're doing. As most of you know, I was in the tequila business for a very long time. I still have some ownership in Azuña Tequila. And it's just not an easy business to be successful at, and to get a couple business hacks from him. I love the notion of learning something every day. And notice how he took it all the way down to, smelling something new or seeing something new. I think as humans, we can always digest something for the better. And taking the opportunity to look around and seeing what the world or people have to offer you is a great way to improve not only your business mindset, but just your own personal mindset, who you are, what you represent. It's interesting. I do a lot of running, and oftentimes that's around the neighborhood. And, they always say stop and smell the flowers. Well, I've literally on a couple occasions stopped just to smell the flowers, because I want to remember what it felt like, as a child, smelling flowers and, the fruits in the area that we grew up, the lemon trees, the orange trees, and things like that. And just some of the simple things in life that we've gotten so far removed from as we continue to dig into our cell phones all day, every day. Just the reality of a rose bush or a lemon tree or an orange tree in your neighborhood, and taking a second to appreciate exactly what that is. So thanks to Pepe for that wonderful reminder of even the smallest things of smelling something new in the marketplace could make a difference in your learnings and your business. So as I continue through some of my own business life hacks, hopefully they'll continue to resonate with you. I've mentioned on air a few times, there's a book that I received this year from a guest who's Alan Stein Jr. He wrote the book, Raise Your Game. It says it's a high-performance secrets from the best of the best. Now, Alan is a performance coach for the NBA and professional basketball players around the country. So, operating at a top level consistently over the years, working with these players, I can only imagine in the short period of time that I'd worked with Bill Walton and some other athletes like Peter Jacobson and Arnold Palmer in my career. You look at these humans and you go, wow, they have achieved so much, really literally greatness. And, you can't help but think what it would be like to be in their mind and to be and have the abilities that they have. And I think Alan's done a great job with his book to help you get there. And it's funny because as I read through his book, I'm looking back on, all the pages that I've earmarked. And it's almost every other page that I've earmarked of something of value that he's put out there. Just under the topic of discipline, he says, decide exactly what you want, determine the price you have to pay, and choose whether or not you're willing to pay it. I mean, just little tidbits like that you can apply to your business life and what you're thinking about doing. For me, looking at what my life goals are and where I want to be down the road, I know that I want to retire with my family on a nice piece of property and have some animals and horses and things for the kids to grow up around and learn that culture, and I know exactly what I want, but then I have to determine what I'm willing to pay for that. And that comes down to how many work hours do I want to put in right now that will take away from my time that I have with my kids, and finding that fulcrum point when I'll work less and move more towards that retirement living. Or do I work a lot more right now and get caught ahead? I recently was on a consulting job that I was thoroughly enjoying. I was out of town a couple days a week, which wasn't really a big deal from an outsider. But the longer I was there, I was there a total of 3 months of traveling. That was including the month of courting one another if I was going to do the job or not. But it took me away from my kids. And when I retired in 2017 from the tequila business, I had the firm notion that I was going to spend every last minute I could with these kids. I waited till I was later in life to have them, and I didn't want to miss a beat. And this job was as great as it was in a new industry, and as much as I enjoyed everybody, it was really starting to deteriorate me inside, being away from my kids a couple days a week. And this was literally one of those situations where the cash was so good that it was hard to ignore, not only for myself, but for my wife. And we started justifying, like, it's okay. The cash really makes a difference. It'll get us closer to retirement sooner, which is exactly what one of my goals were, but at what cost? And I love that Alan's second point here was determine the price you have to pay. And for me, after the 60, 90 days of being away a couple days a week, that price was becoming too high for me. And what's interesting is how the world delivers exactly what you want when you want it. And last week we came to the conclusion, this particular job and myself, that we were going to wrap up my services by the end of the month, and then I would move on. And I've got some wonderful consulting jobs that I'm on as well, and more that I'll be picking up. So really, it didn't hurt me much, but it really opened my eyes of determining the price that I was willing to pay, and whether or not I'd be willing to do it and for how long. So this is a good opportunity for you to think about what you're doing and exactly what you want, the price you have to pay, and whether or not you're willing to pay it. So in that circumstance, for me, as good as the money was, it was easy to make the final decision to have an end date in sight and know that I wasn't willing to pay the price of being away from my kids those couple days a week. So again, I just love where Alan's head's at. At the end of every chapter, he does something kind of neat, and I've read this before, some of these recaps. So he does a chapter key point. So on the chapter of discipline, which I just touched on, the key point was create habits and structure that will give you an edge in your business. Discipline means having, maintaining, and refining a system in place to work on your game. And then the things to remember within the chapter are, there's no such thing as finding success as if you stumbled upon it. You create success by building the habits to reach it. And I just love the opportunity to develop those habits. I've seen habits that I've developed in the last year, even in my 50s now in business, coming up with new habits and seeing the benefits of having them. I just believe that so much by creating success by building those habits. Another remember point was, it's the consistent habits that make the best the best. Build a schedule and a structure of habits that put first things first. I'm doing some life coaching right now, and this month's hot topic, which I actually pulled from David Meltzer, was being a student of your calendar. And what that means and what that looks like is really focusing on your calendar and what you have scheduled for yourself, both personal and in business, and then studying that white space. If you want to talk about being effective and having habits and developing patterns to be successful, look at your white space and what you're doing within that space. And if you have too much white space, you're not concentrating enough on the potential business you can be having, and or just the opposite, the time that you should be scheduling with your family or your recovery or your health. So be a student of your calendar and really study the white space. The third remembrance point for the chapter that Alan lists out is knock out distractions. Consider how to spend your time wisely and efficiently. Be ruthless in trimming the fat from your day. And that, to me, is something that I looked at almost a year ago, and what that was is my social media habits. I realized I was getting up in the morning, grabbing a cup of coffee, and I'd spend 30, 40 minutes on social media just looking at what everybody's been doing. And then in my case, I had some social media clients where I was doing some marketing for them. Then I'd spend another 30 minutes or so updating their pages and creating messaging. And I realized, gosh, I just burned an hour and a half on social media. That's a lot of fat in my diet for social media. So look, I understand how challenging it can be when it comes to social media and the time that you want to spend there. So I'm not saying cut it out, but create some discipline around it. So what I did is I just flip-flopped my schedule on social media. So when I get up, pour my coffee, I dig into those clients that I need to do social media for. And then lo and behold, by the time I'm done with them, I'm over social media. I've seen what I needed to see, or I got that feeling, and I'm not spending any time on my personal social media as I was in the past. And now I treat it more like at the end of my day, if I was going to watch 30 minutes of TV, I'll throw actually the TV on too, but then I'll just be on my social media for that 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and I'm good for the day. So I've trimmed the fat in my world. I don't know what yours looks like, but maybe it's something to consider. Or where are you getting the fat in your day that you can trim? So, and then his fourth thing to remember on discipline was use your unseen hours. Make the most of your time. Those at the top do not want to waste a second. Focus on what matters. Oddly enough, I just read that for the first time in several months, and it relates right back to that white space on your calendar and utilizing the most of your time and filling those gaps. Like I said, that could not only be business, but it can be personal, it could be health, it could be quality eating, it could be learning something new. There's a lot of things that you could make good use of your time with that are wonderful life hacks to make you better. So moving on from some written content is the podcast that I listen to. And, I can kind of summarize it within the last year because I've really only been listening to podcasts maybe a year and a half. And oddly enough, I've been doing this podcast for a year now. We've got 102 episodes and over 15,000 downloads right now. So I'm excited about our success here. But I started listening to Gary Vee on his podcast. And what's interesting is the content that he was putting out a year and a half ago, it was new and fresh to me. And I just really loved his message. And it was his story and about not wasting time and all of Gary's principles about not worrying about what other people thinking about you, do your thing, do you is one of his lines. And also, if you're looking forward to Fridays, you're in the wrong job. And what he means by that is you should be enjoying your job. You should really be looking forward to Mondays going back to work instead of Fridays so you can get after the weekend. So if you're one of those people that you can't wait for your work week to end, maybe you're in the wrong job. So I loved listening to Gary Vee's messages, really his older shows. The newer stuff is okay. It's interesting. He's got a lot of recaps from 2017 that he's been playing recently on his channels. But if you need a good shot in the arm, Gary Vee's the guy to do it. What I'm listening to right now, and by the way, I love podcasts because with the kids, I have a really hard time digging into a book, and I get only snippets of reading, and I don't know, maybe I don't have a big attention span, so it's hard for me to really to dig in and enjoy it. So I'm enjoying podcasts, especially with my running and training schedule. So right now I'm listening to David Meltzer, The Playbook. What I love about that show is, and by the way, it's all athletes on there. 99% of his guests are athletes. And if you know anything about me, I do not follow football or any traditional sports at all. So most people, I might recognize their name, but I don't know, what team they're on, who they play for, what their history is. But what I do like about it is he interviews these athletes and talks about the business of being an athlete and what they bring to the table and where they are now, whether they're still playing sports or their business involved with sports or their post-sports businesses. And I've really picked up a lot from David Meltzer's shows. So it's David Meltzer, The Playbook. They're about 20 minutes an episode. So it's not a huge commitment. Maybe you're driving down the road, to work, or you can listen to half the show on the way to the grocery store or something. But I really enjoy The Playbook. One of the shows that I picked up from David Meltzer was Quick Brain, and that's KWIK Brain. And it's by Jim Quick, and it's all about brain hacks, whether that's the health of your brain, things that you eat that affect your brain, how to remember things that you've heard. He does a trick where he'll speak in front of an audience, and he'll ask 100 people their names, and then he'll repeat them all back to you. They're brain hacks, and I love the notion of learning more about myself and how to be stronger mentally. I was always impressed working with Bill Walton, how he could remember everybody's names and stories. And it's easy to do. Well, it's not easy to do for me, but you would think it's easy to do in the moment and at that particular event. But what amazed me with Bill Walton is I was with him long enough where when we would travel back to a city a year later, he would remember people and their names, what they did, or something